I'm Kizzy Nicholas, a learning support teacher in the State College Area School District. I have taught 21 years teaching remedial math and writing classes to middle school students. This presentation will be about my evolution from a teacher that focused solely on restorative practices in the classroom to understanding the need to integrate social emotional learning into my classroom practices. Philosophy on teaching has three different parts: classroom management, learning, and relationship building. My philosophy on classroom management is to use restorative practices, specifically restorative questions, to help understand student behaviors. In the book, The Power of Neurodivergency, we learn that restorative interventions can help students understand the child with disabilities behavior. We learn that they are not troublemakers, but are trying to satisfy an unconscious need and do not know how to address it properly. Using restorative questions, the student and I can discover the underlying reason for the behavior and to find a solution that helps them address their need in a positive manner. My philosophy on education is based on the idea of mastery. Often concepts are taught too fast for students with disabilities, leading them to feel that they are not as bright as other kids in the room. My classroom teaches that it's okay to take longer to master a concept, and we will make mistakes along the way. I take great pains to show the students that I make mistakes all the time. This philosophy is designed to help them overcome their shame. Shame can be a very powerful emotion, and people will try to avoid it. In schools, this will manifest as either acting out or other class avoidance behaviors. To achieve the above goals, I work to create relationships with students that are not solely based on academics. We spend good portions of the beginning of our school year working on various team building and community building activities so that we can build a level of trust and understanding with each other. So that when we have problems in the classroom, there is already that foundation of trust and knowing that the other person cares about each other, and that helps us resolve our issues. What is the difference between social emotional learning and restorative practices? Social emotional learning is a structure for organizing that develops affective, intrapersonal, and interpersonal learning. It has five major components: self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision making, and social awareness. Restorative practices are considered an alternate to traditional discipline actions. They focus on restoring and resolving conflicts, repairing harm, and healing relationships. The goal is to create a positive and safe school climate to prevent bullying and reduce other disciplinary incidents. Given the increase of students experiencing mental health issues, I need to learn these practices to help these students navigate these health issues. One of the components of effective social emotional lessons is teaching self-awareness and relationship skills. These concepts are essential for students facing mental health concerns as it leads to self-advocacy skills, which can lead to asking for help when they are struggling with situations. This chain of events can teach students their options when facing a crisis. In the book, Social Emotional Learning in the Classroom, it is noted that creating a classroom that provides emotional safety can promote positive childhood experience. Explicit instruction in restorative practices teaches students to recognize their behaviors and how to use coping strategies. The improved ability and positive experiences can help increase protective factors that can prevent or lessen the effects of mental health concerns. Restorative classrooms invite students to learn about each other beyond a superficial level. Social emotional classrooms invite students to see the world through each other's eyes. Restorative and social emotional classrooms must exist together in order to educate the whole child. Traditional social emotional lessons are associated with social skills, but this program also has a role in bridging our country's divide. In public schools, just as our nation, We are becoming an increasingly diverse place. Teachers must learn to accommodate a wide range of learning styles, and that means addressing the needs of this diverse population. Schools need to shift their focus to looking at the whole child, which will include the challenges and experiences that the child will face beyond out the school doors. Social emotional lessons must expand their emotional life skills to include equity and inclusion. For these programs to be effective, the lessons must be relevant to modern life and inclusive of social emotional situations that may occur. In teaching social emotional learning, educators are presented with an opportunity to address their unconscious bias against marginalized populations by examining their focus on what they teach during these lessons. A pitfall that must be avoided when teaching social emotional learning skills is addressing the equity and inclusion and unintended bias that may affect the topics that are taught to certain students. In her lecture, Dr. Simmons discussed how social emotional lessons for minority students tend to focus on overcoming adversity and remediating issues that are socially undesirable, while white children are taught to enhance their academic and social skills. As we examine our expectations for students, we as educators can increase our self-awareness while creating lessons to improve our students' emotional intelligence. Our social emotional lessons can undo the racial, socioeconomic, and ableist constraints that our marginalized students face and provide them with positive skills. In the book Social Emotional Learning in the Classroom, it states that it is important to foster an environment that promotes safety, both physically, emotionally, and mentally for the members of that community. In a school community, we have three types of relationships. There is the teacher to student relationship, the student to student relationship, and the teacher to teacher relationship. It is essential to foster good relationship between these different groups. Members of this group need to understand how to work together and work with each other to resolve problems. Now, as we typically think social emotional lessons are primary for teachers, social emotional lessons can also be effective for teachers to learn how to interact with each other in ways that are appropriate and that demonstrate self-awareness and relational skills and relational awareness. After discussing everything I've learned in this class so far, the next stage would be to see how will I move forward from here. To merge restorative practices and the social emotional learning techniques into my classroom, I will start with using explicit instruction in social emotional learning in the classroom environment. And this will take the form of looking at the expectations in the class, describing them, explaining them, and giving the students time to ask questions and offer suggestions about perhaps modifying each expectation. We will also discuss how to handle and manage situations that may be difficult, either with a peer or with a concept, and how do you handle these frustrations in an appropriate manner. As a teacher, I will have to take more time to learn about the whole child, looking beyond the academic information I'm giving in their education plans, learning, asking the student about themselves, learning about their home lives, learning about their previous school experience. Some of this information I will be able to get from the students, but some of it I will have to go and dig a little, going to guidance counselors and talking to previous teachers about the student. Social emotional learning and restorative practices will have a role in behavior management. While I will continue to use the restorative questions to handle behaviors after the fact, social emotional learning will be applied in teaching students how to handle the behaviors explicitly. What do you do when a student is bothering you while you're doing an assignment? What do you do when you come to class late without an excuse? Of course, the most important part of a restorative class and a class that has strong social emotional intelligence is making sure that it's a community. So to do this, we will have specific lessons on how do you interact with your classmates. We don't call them names, but can we joke with them? What's acceptable for this student may not be acceptable for another student. Community building activities must focus on all learning styles. So the activities and games we will play as we are learning to trust each other and get to know each other must use different types of learning styles. And that may be stationary activities, but that also might involve kinetic activities. And then creating mini lessons so that when we have new students, as you get throughout the school year, those students will have an opportunity to participate in community building lessons so that they can too become part of this already existing community. Have an effective community, we need to make sure that the three elements that have been described in previous slides are all practiced by various members of the community, or all members of the community have had a chance to learn these skills. And this involves teaching behavior expectations, modeling the behaviors, and role-playing conflict resolution and self-regulation skills. Now, for students, this may occur during formal lessons on social emotional learning and restorative practices that are taught in the classroom. For teachers, this also can be done during in-service activities and professional development. All members of school community need to understand how these practices should be implemented in order to have a safe, healthy classroom school environment. Conclusion. In order to design a future of positive change, we must be first experts at changing our minds. I chose this quote because it reminds me that to make changes in the world, I must be willing to make changes in myself. I believe that the journey I have been on for the last 10 weeks has changed the way I will interact with my students.